All right, we're going to start in on Chapter 8. This is Skeletal System. I'm just going to give you some notes here. I'm not going to follow the PowerPoint today. We'll pick up on PowerPoint later on, or you can read it pretty much by yourself. These are some notes that I've collected over time, and I want you to play this video back as many times as you'd like. First of all, we have 206 bones in our body. These bones are a type of connective tissue. It consists of widely separated bone cells that are embedded in a matrix of collagen fibers and mineral salts, and it forms the vertebrate skeleton. We are a vertebrate. I want you to keep in mind that these collagen fibers help to give some elasticity, some flexibility to our bones, to our skeletal system. Mineral salts help to solidify, to harden, to ossify. There's a new term for you. To ossify the bones. An osteoblast, blast, build up, clast, tear down. So osteoclast and osteoblast. An osteoblast, these are cells that produce bone by secreting collagen fibers on which the body will later deposit mineral salts, calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate, and an osteoclast will consume some of these. Clast breaks down. We have concentric layers of bone tissue. These are called lamellae. We have the Haversian canal. This is a narrow channel that runs parallel to the length of bone, and it contains blood vessels and nerves. Some of these run crosswise and connect to the lengthwise Haversian canals. We have compact bone and spongy bone. Compact bone is just as it says. It is dense. It is solid bone tissue, and it runs the length of long bones, and it covers the spongy bone. This gives bone great strength. The spongy bone, this makes up most of the ends of long bones and most of the bone tissue of short, flat, and irregular bones. This is an open lattice work of very thin plates. The spongy bone makes the bone lightweight. It also provides a place for the red bone marrow, to form. You say, well, what is red bone marrow? Red bone marrow is a place where most of the body's blood cells are formed. And we also have features called yellow bone marrow. This is fatty tissue that fills the hollow cavities in long bones. The term skeleton is a collective term for the body's 206 bones, and it has three primary functions. One for support, one for movement, another one will protect our delicate organs. We have an axial skeleton and an appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is made up of 80 bones. It includes the skull, the vertebral column, and the rib cage. The appendicular skeleton is made up of 126 bones. These form the appendages, the arms, the legs, and the bones that help attach the appendages to the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton is the center, if you will. It's the axis of our skeletal system. And the appendicular is what our appendages are. The skull is the framework of the head, and it's made up of 8 cranial bones and 14 facial bones. I'll provide you with a list later on of bones that you will need to learn for this class. Our vertebral column is 26 bones. These are called vertebrae. They're stacked on top of one another along the midline of our back, or our posterior surface. It acts as a strong, flexible, hollow rod that supports the head, and it encases the spinal cord, or the nerve sac, if you will. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar vertebrae, a sacrum, and a coccyx. Separating these vertebrae are intervertebral discs. These discs are made of fibrocartilage. They're somewhat flexible. They're sometimes are illustrated as a donut that doesn't have the hole that goes all the way through it. These are partitioned between the vertebrae, except the sacrum and the coccyx. And these act as a connection between the vertebrae, and they act as a shock absorber, and it gives us the movement that we need to move our vertebral column from side to side. The 12 thoracic vertebrae correspond to the 12 pair of ribs. The ribs will come off of these. We have our true ribs are made up of 7 pair of ribs that's connected directly to the sternum here, and the false ribs are 5 pair of ribs that's not directly attached to the sternum. Keep in mind, all of these are going to connect to your vertebral column, to the thoracic vertebrae, the 12 thoracic vertebrae. Of those 5 false ribs, 2 pair of those, of the 5 pair of false ribs, 2 pair of those are going to be floating ribs. They're on the bottom. They're not connected to anything either exactly or cartilaginously at all. They're just free floating, so to speak. The last 2 pair of false ribs are the floating ribs. We also have a hyoid bone here in our throat, part of our axial skeleton. It does not form a joint with any other bone. It is the only one in the body that's like that, and the tongue is attached to the hyoid bone. Let's talk about the appendicular skeleton. We've discussed a little about the axial skeleton. The appendicular, those of the appendages. We have 2 primary features of that being the pectoral girdle, that's made up of 2 pair of bones, the clavicles or your collarbones, one on each side here, and the scapula, that being your shoulder blades on your posterior portion of your body. The other portion of the appendicular skeleton is a pelvic girdle. This is at our hips. This is made up of 2 bones called coxal bones. These are our hip bones. We have some features that we term joints. These are placed within the skeletal system where bones or bones and cartilage articulate. Articulate means to come together. We have immovable joints, we have slightly movable joints, and we have freely movable joints. These offer us various types of movement. We have a suture. This is an immovable joint. This would be like bones that we would find in our skull. We have hinge joints. This would be like at the elbow, like at the elbow or knee. This allows movement in one plane And we have ball and socket joints. This is a joint that allows rotation, as we would find at the shoulder or the hip. Pivot joints. This allows us to turn our head from side to side. This is a side-to-side movement. A gliding joint. This is one that would slide in many directions, such as between our vertebrae. A saddle joint is the sixth type. This gives us movement at right angles. That would be like our thumb. And an ellipsoid joint. This is nearly a hinge. And this would be like the skull and the first vertebrae. You can dip your head down just to your shoulder. A couple other terms that I want to offer you here is a ligament. A ligament and a tendon differ in that a ligament is a strip of dense connective tissue that attaches bone to bone, while a tendon is connective tissue that attaches skeletal muscle to bone. Another feature that I want to talk to you about is a synovial joint. This is a joint that has fluid between the articulating points. We would find this in the ankle, in the wrist, in the knee, and in the elbow. I'll post for you the PowerPoints for Chapter 8. You can get more information from that. This concludes my presentation on Chapter 8, Body Structure and Function.